Ever wondered why Africa, a continent with such abundant natural resources, grapples with extreme poverty? It's a fascinating paradox, isn't it? This land of vast deserts, lush rainforests, and incredible wildlife also houses some of the world's poorest nations. This video will take you on a journey through the top 10 poorest countries in Africa, as determined by GDP per capita. We'll be exploring the economic struggles they face despite their rich natural reserves. Join us as we delve into the economic realities of the 10 poorest nations in Africa. Starting the countdown at number 10, we find Guinea. This West African nation, despite being blessed with vast mineral resources such as bauxite, gold, and diamonds, finds itself grappling with economic hardship. The nation's wealth, unfortunately, does not translate into prosperity for its citizens. A key factor contributing to Guinea's economic struggles is political instability. Since gaining independence in 1958, the country has experienced multiple coups, which have had a detrimental impact on its economic development. These political upheavals create an environment of uncertainty, discouraging both local and foreign investments. Another significant challenge is the lack of infrastructure. The country's poor transportation and energy infrastructure hampers economic activities. For instance, the inadequate road network makes it difficult to transport goods, while the lack of reliable electricity supply stifles industrial development. In addition, the low level of education and high illiteracy rates further hinder economic growth and development. Despite its wealth in minerals, Guinea remains economically challenged. This underscores the paradox where a nation rich in resources can still struggle with poverty. Moving on to number 9, we have Ethiopia. This East African nation is known for its diverse culture, breathtaking landscapes, and the world-famous Ethiopian coffee. But beneath this vibrant exterior, Ethiopia grapples with several major economic challenges. One of these is the immense pressure put on the country's resources due to its rapidly growing population. The country's economy is heavily reliant on agriculture, which makes up about 3/4 of its employment and nearly half of its GDP. This dependency on agriculture means that any fluctuations in weather patterns or climate change impacts can have devastating effects on the economy. Additionally, Ethiopia is often at the mercy of unpredictable weather patterns that can lead to droughts or floods, affecting the country's food security and agricultural output. This, combined with the country's vulnerability to climate change, makes Ethiopia's path to economic stability and prosperity a challenging one. Ethiopia's economy faces an uphill battle due to these challenges. Next on our list, we have Mali, Burkina Faso, and Sierra Leone, taking the 8th, 7th, and 6th spots respectively. Let's start with Mali. Located in West Africa, Mali is a landlocked nation with a significant majority of its population engaged in subsistence agriculture. Unfortunately, the country's economic development is hampered by several factors, including a harsh climate, low literacy rates, and political instability. Its reliance on gold mining and agricultural exports makes it vulnerable to commodity price fluctuations, further exacerbating its economic woes. Moving on, we reach Burkina Faso. Much like Mali, Burkina Faso is a landlocked country heavily dependent on subsistence farming, with around 80% of its population engaged in agriculture. This dependence on a sector that is vulnerable to climate changes and market volatility, coupled with a rapidly growing population, has resulted in persistent poverty. Moreover, the country's progress is hindered by limited access to quality education and healthcare and ongoing security issues. Finally, we journey to Sierra Leone. This West African nation, while rich in diamonds and other minerals, suffers from economic instability and the devastating effects of a decade-long civil war that ended in 2002. Despite its natural wealth, a large portion of the population lives in poverty due to rampant corruption, inadequate infrastructure, and a lack of job opportunities. Issues such as high youth unemployment and low literacy rates further contribute to Sierra Leone's economic challenges. These three nations, each with their own unique challenges, are reflective of the broader economic struggles faced by many countries in Africa. Mali, Burkina Faso, and Sierra Leone, despite their potential, grapple with poverty due to a multitude of issues. From climate change and political instability to a lack of access to quality education and healthcare, These nations' challenges are a stark reminder of the complexities of poverty. They underscore the need for comprehensive and sustainable solutions that address not just the symptoms, but the root causes of poverty. These nations, despite their potential, grapple with poverty due to a multitude of issues. We've reached the halfway mark with Mozambique, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Burundi, standing at 5th, 4th, and 3rd poorest respectively. Beginning with Mozambique, this Southeast African nation is primarily dependent on agriculture, which accounts for more than 1/4 of its GDP. Despite rich natural resources, including coal and natural gas, the nation grapples with rampant corruption, poor infrastructure, and the aftermath of a devastating civil war. These factors have severely hampered economic growth and development, placing Mozambique on this list. Moving westward, we find the Democratic Republic of Congo, a country endowed with an abundance of natural resources. Its vast mineral wealth includes significant deposits of copper, cobalt, diamonds, gold, and coltan. However, despite this seeming wealth, the DRC is paradoxically one of the poorest countries in Africa. Persistent conflict, weak governance, and corruption have stifled economic development, with the majority of its population living on less than $2 a day. The DRC's wealth paradox serves as a stark reminder of the complexities of poverty. Lastly, we have Burundi, one of the smallest countries in Africa. Burundi's economy is overwhelmingly agricultural, with more than 90% of its population dependent on subsistence farming. The country's history of political instability and ethnic conflict, coupled with its limited access to education and healthcare, have exacerbated poverty rates. Furthermore, Burundi's high population density and lack of arable land have put a strain on its resources, making it one of the poorest countries in the world, not just Africa. These three countries, Mozambique, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Burundi, each with their unique challenges, tell a tale of struggle and resilience. They also underline the intricate relationship between political stability, good governance, access to education, health services, and economic prosperity. In conclusion, these countries illustrate the harsh realities of poverty in Africa. They remind us that poverty is not merely about income, but also encompasses a multitude of factors, from governance to access to basic services. It is a complex issue that requires multifaceted solutions. Coming in at number 2, we have the Central African Republic. This landlocked nation, despite its vast natural resources, is entangled in a web of economic challenges. The Central African Republic is a stark example of how political instability can undermine a country's progress. Ongoing conflict and the absence of a stable government have severely hampered economic development. The lack of infrastructure is another significant hurdle. With limited access to basic amenities like clean water, electricity, and quality healthcare, the population struggles to rise above the poverty line. Additionally, the Central African Republic's economy is largely dependent on subsistence agriculture, leaving it vulnerable to climate change and market fluctuations. Education, a key driver of economic growth, is also severely impacted by these issues. Many children are unable to attend school, perpetuating a cycle of poverty. The Central African Republic's economic struggle is a testament to the impact of conflict on prosperity. And now, the poorest country in Africa, South Sudan. South Sudan, the world's youngest nation, has been grappling with a myriad of economic challenges since its independence in 2011. The economic situation in this East Central African country is a complex web of issues, with ongoing conflict, political instability, and an over-reliance on oil being the main culprits. Conflict has been a constant in South Sudan. Civil wars have ravaged the nation, devastating its economy and forcing millions to flee their homes. This ongoing conflict has not only resulted in a humanitarian crisis, but has also severely hampered economic development. The political instability in South Sudan is another major hurdle. Frequent changes in leadership and governmental structure have created an unpredictable environment that deters both domestic and foreign investment. The lack of a stable government also hampers the country's ability to effectively manage its resources and implement economic reforms. The third major challenge is South Sudan's heavy dependence on oil. Oil revenues make up nearly all of the country's budget and exports. This over-reliance leaves South Sudan's economy extremely vulnerable to fluctuations in global oil prices. Moreover, the lack of diversification means that other sectors, such as agriculture and manufacturing, are underdeveloped, limiting job opportunities and economic growth. South Sudan, the youngest country in the world, faces the harshest economic realities in Africa. Despite these challenges, the people of South Sudan continue to persevere, hoping for a brighter, more prosperous future. From South Sudan to Guinea, economic struggles persist across Africa. We've taken quite a journey together, exploring the vast landscapes of these countries, and now it's time to sum up the main factors contributing to the widespread poverty. Political instability is a common thread weaving through these nations, hindering economic development. Unstable governments and conflicts often lead to a lack of infrastructure, which in turn impacts everything from education to healthcare to transportation. Climate change is another significant factor, particularly in regions heavily dependent on agriculture. Unpredictable weather patterns and extreme events can devastate crops, leaving communities hungry and destitute. Population pressure, especially in rural areas, further compounds these issues. With high birth rates and limited resources, the struggle to provide for growing families is a daily reality for many. Finally, the dependency on agriculture, while a source of livelihood, also leaves these countries vulnerable to fluctuations in global commodity prices. Understanding these realities is the first step towards addressing poverty in Africa.